here before you to provide an update regarding the bicycle plan, and we have Bradley Calvert here who will take you through a number of slides to give you an update of the report that was done in 2012. And we do have a couple of action items to ask you for approval at the end of the presentation. With that, Bradley.
Good afternoon, council members. As mentioned, we are here to discuss the bicycle transportation plan. We do have a couple of action items as part of this in terms of amending the plan, but we are also here to obtain your feedback, as the last time, or this plan was adopted back in 2012, so this is an excellent opportunity to gain the current council's feedback. Some overview of the discussion today, as I had mentioned, just overview of the plan in general, kind of what we've accomplished, the implementation that we've achieved to date, any forthcoming implementation that we anticipate, and that includes some of the proposed staff amendments to the plan, and those recommended amendments, and then also to obtain council's feedback. So the plan, as mentioned, was adopted in September of 2012. The city used a technical advisory committee, and this was composed of City of Glendale departments, the Chamber of Commerce, boards and commissions, residents, advocacy groups, and local schools and colleges to obtain their feedback on routes that were important to them, infrastructure that was important to them as well, to help form and shape this plan. The purpose of the bicycle transportation plan is to create a network of routes and improve our existing bicycle facilities. One of the main goals is to link the major activity nodes within Glendale, and to also install secure bicycle parking, and that includes bike racks. And then if you look on one of the attachments that we included, and then a slide we'll have later, you'll notice that there are bicycle lockers around the periphery, or proposed bicycle lockers around the periphery at park and rides and kind of gateways and entries to the city. What this plan is not is it does not guarantee implementation for some of these items. We still come back to council to obtain approval whenever we pursue a particular scope of work. Much of this work, especially when it comes to sharrows and bike lanes, it occurs when we have paving projects, restriping projects, other public works and infrastructure projects. So we bring that back to council and we obtain council's approval on that scope of work. And that's a chance for council to weigh in one more time. Is that a commitment that we want to make? Do we want to see that portion of the bike plan through? Other elements and additional purpose behind that bicycle transportation plan is also to expand the advocacy and education. What are the benefits of cycling, both for students, for residents, for commuting, but to make them aware and to make them aware of some of the facilities that we have. Also to create a safe environment for cyclists of all ages, young, elderly, able-bodied, a system and a network that all residents can use. This improves public health. It also assists us in reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. It's one less car that we were able to remove from the road. In the bicycle transportation plan, we mentioned a number of, or essentially 3 classes of improvements that we can make. The first class is a separated bicycle lane, and this is physical separation of cyclists from automobile traffic. And this can come through pathways, bicycle paths essentially that are dedicated just for those, but also physical separation through curb lanes. That separation can come from curbs, it can come from planter boxes, it can come from a number of different things, whatever is most fitting of that context. A class 2 is a separated bicycle lane, but it does not have a physical barrier. There is no curb, there's no actual separation from the cyclists from the automobiles. Class 3 is a sharrow, and it's important to note that this does not provide physical separation or protection, but it does make drivers aware that this is a bicycle route and that they should be aware of cyclists on that route. So prior to the adoption of the bicycle transportation plan, this was the existing network. You'll see some routes, primarily sharrows to the north of the city. There's some to the west as well, a handful to the south. As part of the plan network, you can see that this is much more robust. This includes a full network, east, west, north, south. It connects all of the major activity centers, gateways, connections to Pasadena, to Burbank, to the surrounding context. Since then, this graphic represents what has been actually implemented. And you can see that we have accomplished a substantial amount of work. A number of changes to the north and the west. As you can see, a more comprehensive north and east-west network. In South Glendale, you see there's a much more comprehensive network going east to west, but there's still work to be done north to south. Other related projects, as I had mentioned before, Bicycle parking is an important element to this, and that includes providing short-term parking through bike racks, long-term parking for bike lockers. Our Safe Routes to School program also supports this, encouraging children to ride bikes to school. And the first last mile improvements for the Glendale Transportation Center. And these were a series of projects that were already approved by council. You can see in this graphic here, it shows locations for improved signage for pedestrians and cyclists. It shows the city's first protected bikeway on Los Feliz. It also includes sharrows and other bike lanes as well. And these are the amendments that staff has brought forth today to council that we are asking to be included as part of the bicycle plan. Again, these are projects already approved by council, but these are ones that we want to include in the bicycle transportation plan, so it's part of that comprehensive network. And that includes that protected bikeway in Los Feliz that goes from the railroad tracks to Gardenia Avenue, a Class 2 bike lane from Gardenia Avenue to San Fernando Road, installing bicycle and pedestrian wayfinding on Cerritos Avenue, installing a Class 3 bikeway, which is Sharrows, from Gardenia to Cerritos, on Gardenia from Cerritos to Los Feliz Boulevard, and then another Class 3 bikeway on Central Avenue from Gardenia to San Fernando Road. And these are ones that we want to incorporate into that comprehensive network. This really helps improve connectivity for non-motorized traffic that's coming out of the transportation center and also going in. And again, this graphic here highlights that. That red dash line shows that Class 1 protected bikeway extending to San Fernando with the separated, or the actual bike lane, not separated though. And then the green lines represent the bike route, the sharrows that we would include. The red circle showing that improved wayfinding that leads you to and from the transportation center. So in today's action items, we are either asking council to note and file this document, or to direct staff to amend this plan to include these amendments that we've recommended, or to also obtain any council feedback on additional amendments they would like us to see incorporated. That can include the addition or subtraction or modification of any of the existing routes.
Any questions from staff?
For staff, how long is the protected bikeway on Gardena and, what is it, to Los Feliz? The first one?
It's approximately a block. It goes from the railroad tracks. You can, sure, this will highlight here, to Gardenia. It's that red dash line. It's about 1 block.
And is there, or are there plans to extend that so that it's a longer protected?
Going to San Fernando, it would create a separated lane, but not physical separation.
And number 2, install a Class 2 bike lane from Gardena to San Fernando Road. What's the difference between 2 and 1, Class 1 and Class 2?
Class 1 includes physical separation. That's usually a curb, a 6-inch raised curb between the automobiles and the cyclist. In the case of a Class 2, that's a painted strip. So it's a dedicated lane, but it's not physical separation.
I see it now in the
Actually,
photo.
I'll go back to that example so you can see the difference there. So in that top image, you can see that white curb.
Right. And that's what you're going to have, that's the first protected Los Feliz from the railroad tracks to Gardena? Okay.
And then
For
picture 2
1 block.
would be the example of that extension to San Fernando.
Okay, and I've gotten emails about, I know on Ethel and other streets in Glendale, you're planning to put sharrows. Now, can you please refresh the definition of sharrows? Because I have people emailing me that are just like, why are you going to put a bike lane on my street? And, the street is narrow enough, and now you're going to make it more narrow. Can you explain what sharrows are? Because I tried to do that, and I just want to make sure that everybody knows the difference between a sharrow and bike lanes.
The sharrow does not change the physical composition of the lanes. It does not reduce the width. It does not add a bike lane. It's more of an icon that exhibits to the drivers to be aware that there are cyclists on the roads. But it does not change the physical width. It doesn't take out lanes, reduce lane width, or anything of that nature.
Thank you. Thank you. I just wanted to make that clear to everyone.
Okay, any questions for staff?
Maybe I have to ask, please. So if a bicyclist going on and you are behind that bicyclist on the sharrows, so you have to follow, because if there's a double marked lane on middle of the street, you can't bypass the bicyclist, right?
That is correct. According to traffic laws, yes, that's correct.
So if there is a uphill street, it will take forever by the time you can get to the next place.
Potentially, yes. The idea is that space is a shared space for both for cyclists and automobile drivers.
I thought those shares, or the street which you share, actually, should be a spot where the bicyclist can maneuver, let the car to pass. Otherwise, it will take such a long time. I mean, imagine on, I think it's Sonora Avenue. You know, that's Sherrill Lane, let's say, and it takes forever if you don't cross the middle marking of the street. So it will take you a long time to go anywhere.
Let me just add that the vehicle code now states that you have to give at least 3 feet between the bicyclist and your car.
When you pass them?
That's what I'm saying. It's
Right.
very hard on
Yeah.
Sonora Avenue. It's like there is marked.
So I
for
don't
bicycle.
think, so if your statement is that can you cross over that line, that double yellow line to
yellow
pass
line.
them, I don't think you can, so you would have
That's what
to
I'm
be.
saying. That means that the double lines are like a wall as far as the police is concerned. So then it will take you a long time to wait and to see this bicyclist to get to wherever they are going.
Well,
And it depends on the street that you're on. If there's on-street parking, there may be an opportunity for a cyclist or a driver to be able to pull to the side to allow someone to pass. I guess it's more of a contextual situation. It's always depending on what the composition of that street is. In the case of the Sharrows, it's more of an opportunity to inform drivers that they'll be there where we're not able to create that separation so that we don't have that conflict between the two. What we could look into, are there other improvements that we could make that could create an opportunity for pullouts or pullovers for automobiles or cyclists?
Thank you.
And that's the case regardless of whether there's a Class 1 or Class 2 lane. You still have to maintain that space, and a bicyclist is permitted in any lane, and they don't have to ride to the right side. They're entitled to the full use of the lane.
That's correct.
So, I mean, obviously, it's a cooperative, there's some cooperation required between drivers, bicyclists, and anyone else that uses the roadway, so.
and hopefully there's some sort of etiquette that goes along with that a cyclist would know that there's a car behind them, and they would, if possible, pull over a little further to the right than normal. I don't know, we have a cyclist in the audience, we could probably ask him if this is...
I'm gonna
if
call
this
him out soon.
Is this cycling etiquette? Is there such a thing? I mean,
Well, we'll ask him when he comes up. I have one question for Bradley. This plan that we approved, the first and last mile, Phase 1, Phase 2, that's going to be incorporated into our bike plan, master plan. We are not taking any drive lanes out, like on San Fernando or any of them.
No, we're not removing any lanes for that.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I'm going to call our speaker today, Mr. Manoukian, Rafi Manoukian.
How much time?
How much time do you need?
About half an hour. No, not good.
Half an hour it is.
Rafi Manoukian, bicycle commuter. Thank you for the opportunity. What were the questions? The bicycles are allowed actually to take the full lane as long as they're going pretty close to the speed limit. So they can't, in a 30-mile-an-hour zone, they can't be going 10 miles an hour. They should be moving over. And just to preface my comments, there are most bicyclists are very nice people, and they usually move over and allow cars to pass. And most drivers are very decent people, and they are very careful around bicyclists, especially in Glendale. I know Glendale has not a very good reputation in terms of drivers are concerned, but my experience as it relates to bicycling all over the city, most of the drivers are very nice. Once in a while you get someone behind you who starts honking, but that's expected once in a while, and that's not unusual. Today I wanted to mention a few items. First, I was at the new library, and there was no bicycle parking area there in the front. Maybe there was one in the back, but I couldn't find it. And they were presenting bicycle parking as well for the plan as well. So if there's a bicycle, and I locked my bike on the handrail in front of the library. So with the new library, I hope that there would be some bicycle parking over there in the front and not in the back, hidden away, because you always want to park the bike somewhere where it's visible to the community. I was looking at the Exhibit 2 that you have that they showed a little earlier. It looks like a city of sharrows, actually. And I see that they are adding sharrows on Adams Street, going north to south. I avoid Adams Street as much as possible because there's a lot of traffic. It's a very narrow street, and there's a lot of traffic. And Lexington, and those are the major throughways that they're adding. Lexington and Adams are very busy street. Lexington being very busy by Whole Foods and YWCA. There's a lot of traffic there, so I try to avoid there as well. So I don't know if that will help with the traffic situation with the sharrows in those areas. A couple of suggestions in terms of bicycle lanes on Glen Oaks and between Central and Pacific. On the exhibit, it shows that there's a bicycle lane, but there's only a bicycle lane going westbound. There's no bicycle lane coming eastbound. So because it shows here that there's a bicycle lane, I don't think no one pays attention to it. But going eastbound, it's like a death trap. I'm always scared when I'm going eastbound between Pacific and Central on Glen Oaks. Everywhere else, there's a bicycle lane, but that is missing. To the right of that, there's a dirt area. There's no sidewalk. There's plants and all of that. I think the city certainly can put in a bicycle pedestrian way on the right of that, where either bicycles or pedestrians can go from Pacific to Central, even to Brand, because the sidewalk is pretty wide.
Going eastbound, you're saying?
Going eastbound from Pacific to Central to Brand. And you know, the cars, they go 50 miles an hour there, and when you're bicycling and cars come in groups, like 20, 30 of them at once, and you're bicycling, and it's really kind of scary. And it could be very dangerous. The other suggestion is on San Fernando, I don't know, Mr. Najarian probably remembers, we put bushes so to beautify the area on the west side of San Fernando. I think there's an opportunity to do a bike lane and a pedestrian lane instead of doing those bushes. Don't really beautify the area. If we put a bike lane there, I think all those bikeways that they showed going east to west, that could tie from north to south on San Fernando on the west side. So that would be a great project as well. And I also want to talk about the Glendale River Walk project today, Phase 2. Kudos to the council. It's a great project. Kudos to Congressman Adam Schiff, Assemblymember Laura Friedman, Senator Anthony Portantino, and Glendale's own Metro Representative, Mr. Najarian. So thank you. That is a great project, and I'm looking forward to the bridge going over to Griffith Park. I think that would be a great addition. In terms of bicycling and getting people out to bicycle, I thought I would parlay this little information to you as well. There's a city and I was reading about this, there's a city in Italy that wanted to encourage their residents to use public transportation, to walk and cycle more often. So they came up with a reward system where they download an app and they record their ride, whether it's public transportation, whether it's walking or cycling, they record it, and based on certain criteria, they get a reward. And the rewards are ice cream, movie tickets, and beer. So So I think that's one way of encouraging people to get out and cycle more, give them a reward like beer. The more you cycle, the more beer you get. So that's, I can forward
Dan Bell.
that article to you. I thought it was a really interesting article that they're approaching. It just shows that outside the box thinking when it comes to transportation. So thank you very much, and have a good day.
Thank you, Mr. Manoukian. Okay, so any comments on the plan, proposals?
Well, I just want to ask, there were some good suggestions there from former council member, I can't think of it, Rafi. Thank you, Manoukian. And are we taking note of those and perhaps putting those into the plan or possibly in the future?
Per council's direction, we could add those in as amendments to the plan.
Okay, I think we should.
So as,
Take a look.
I'll just jump in because Pro Tem is away. So bicycle improvements have a way of driving communities crazy. I think we can all agree to that. We've seen examples on the west side and throughout where with every good intention, a Class 1 or Class 2 or Class 3 bike lane goes in, and commuters feel ambushed. They feel that improvements have been made without their input. So I just want to make sure, and I know staff has assured me in private, but no implementation of any improvement will be made until council gives a final okay.
Correct. It would come back as part of that scope of work of whatever project that may be associated with. So if there was a restriping or a repaving project, the element that's in the bicycle plan would be included as part of that scope. When they come to council to get approval for the scope of the contract, that would be a chance for council to modify that, take that out, whatever that may be.
And there's a dotted line on one of our lines, one of the maps that discusses the Verdugo Wash bike plan. I am I believe I'm conflicted on that. I have not asked an opinion of the city attorney. But before that is implemented, you assure us that it would come to council where any conflicts would be resolved and we could have an input as to the discussion, because that's, like I said, bicycle improvements drive neighborhoods crazy. We did one on Verdugo back in 1999, maybe 2000, without any input, I think. They just did it. They took a lane away, so it was only one lane of traffic north-south with a bike lane. I think it was a Class 1 lane. And just people were crazy and they were very upset. They were asking for recalls. As long as we don't get into that situation, I'm happy with the bike plan. I just want to make sure that that this is a general direction, a general vision, but the specifics will be brought back to council for approval prior to implementation.
Very true, and in fact, you'd probably get it a couple of times. Once when there's funding, whether it's through budget or a grant, second time through a scope, so there will be more than once that we would come back to council. On that note, I should say, Mr. Manoukian had several suggestions that sound very good, but if the council would like, direct us to go study those. We do need to study to make sure, as opposed to just amending the plan before that study. If you would like us to look at those, we can, and then bring this back for an amendment with the data and the study on those.
I'd like to suggest that you do that. I think there were some good suggestions there. If I can get a second on that?
I'll second that.
That could go in motion 1C, Councilmember Devine, in terms of direction items that they would be looking at for future, correct, Phil?
Okay.
You need that?
No,
Just to follow up on what Mr. Councilmember Najarian was saying, I live in Verdugo Woodlands as well, and I may be conflicted out on even making any comments on Verdugo Wash. But since we live up there, I received so many emails from the residents of Whiting Woods area, Verdugo Woodlands area, as well as East Glen Oaks area, that they were very concerned about this idea of the vertigo wash bike path, and they didn't know if it's inside the wash, outside the wash. Do we have the dedicated area for the right-of-way along the wash or not? So this I think, I'm sure we are looking into FPCC and see if we are conflicted or not. So I would like to know when this ever comes back, and when is it going to be. And as far as the plan goes, it's a very comprehensive plan. I went through the whole thing. I agree with Mr. Najarian that every time we want to implement any of these plans, it has to come back to council. I'm sure you bring it back, so for us to review and approve case by case cases basically on it, because some of this thing, as was mentioned, implementing all of these plans will take years and years and years, and some of it is really great, but some of it is in really congested areas that it's recommending removal of traffic lanes, and some areas recommending a removal of parking. So I think when we are going to, as the road improvement projects come along, we will look at the implementation of some of this plan. So it's doable at that time. I just want to make sure that that's the case. With that, if there is a motion to note and file, we'll take the motion and take a vote and move forward.
All three items?
There are no other comments.
There's three items.
Three of them. Do you
No.
want to take them separately?
Can they take them together, Mike?
Yes.
Together? Okay, I'll move items A, B, and C with the addition, and item C for the additional study suggested by City Treasurer Manukian.
Is there a second?
He was here as private.
I'm sorry, that's right,
Private citizen
by cyclist Rafi Manukian, correct.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Council members Agajanian,
Yes.
Devine,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Mayor Sinanian, Mayor Pro Tem Garpetian.
Yes. Do we have any closed session items?
We do.
We do? Okay.
Yes. After we adjourn this special meeting, then we can do the
Okay,
council.
to adjourn
This was a special meeting,
this special meeting.
so we need a motion.
Is there a
Second.
Second.
We are adjourned for the special.